breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Robbie Rosenhaus, does a great job all year. And sadly, Robbie, this is our last show of the season because the Vikings are not playoff bound, unfortunately. Even despite their 5-game winning streak to end the season, and so many what ifs this year. If they'd stayed healthier on the offensive line, if the defense had Van Ginkel early, Grenard late, if they'd had more takeaways, if JJ McCarthy had stayed healthy, been more consistent, Carson Wentz had played better, or if they'd had a better number 2 quarterback, maybe a more pertinent question. All the different things that happened. And the crazy thing, Robbie, when I was kind of breaking down the playoffs, and after the Vikings with their 16-3 win over the Packers on Sunday, now we understand the Packers didn't play many of their key starters, but I'm not sure it would have been any different because the way that defense has been playing lately, I think the Vikings still may have had a win. And so, and you and I have talked about this several times this year, I think the Viking coaches, players, team execs, they're always going to go back to that Bear game, the kickoff return. And if they had indeed covered that kickoff by Devin Duvernay and then held on and stopped Caleb Williams, one more win, they could have ended up 10-7. The Bears would have had one more loss, and they get beat by the Lions yesterday when they had something to play for. All of a sudden, you think about, hey, the way it all shook out, the Vikings could well have won the NFC North if they'd beaten the Bears on November 16th. Didn't happen. Ifs and buts, we know how that works. But it's a painful reality for the Vikings and for a lot of teams around the NFL year to year. And it's also interesting, you see so many new playoffs teams this year, and just breaking it down over the last 24 hours and seeing there's 4 new playoff teams in the NFC: Seattle, Carolina, Chicago, San Francisco compared to last year. 2 new playoff teams in the AFC: Jacksonville and New England. Big wild card weekend coming up. Vikings unfortunately will not be part of it, and what could have been.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And for those listeners out there who are watching on YouTube, I was holding up 3 fingers to Jeff, and I didn't mean because I wanted him to call for 3 balls on the batter. It meant because the Vikings should have been the 3 seed, Jeff. I mean, you just laid out the scenario absolutely perfectly, and I'm just kind of putting a bow on it. Is that they would have hosted the Packers here next week in that 3-7 game. And this Packer team has had some serious issues with tough defenses this year. They couldn't move the ball on the Eagles, and they couldn't move the ball yesterday on the Vikings. And I don't think that they would have come out of that game. The Vikings would have been sitting so pretty. But it just goes to show you, Jeff, that in a league where probably 3/4 of the games weekly are decided by 1 score or less, the margins are so thin that you never apologize for wins in this league, right?
No, definitely not. And they finished with 5 straight wins. And actually, as a 3rd seed, they would have taken on the 6th seed, which would be San Francisco, but it would have been a home game this week. And that would have been great. And they could have been set up to possibly then play the 2 seed the next week, which would have been Philadelphia in that scenario. But regardless, we know the Vikings had their chances this year. Didn't work out ultimately. They finished strong, have some positive momentum into next year. But again, every year is different. There are going to be a lot of questions ahead in the offseason, starting with the future development of JJ McCarthy and his having better health, more maybe some strength training for him. thinking about Brian Flores' future as a defensive coordinator, salary cap maneuvering. The Vikings are reportedly about 30 million over the cap. But I'll tell you, Robbie, as a former capologist, they can quickly get that resolved. First of all, they're going to probably release Ryan Kelly, the center, pick up about $8.5 million there because they just can't count on him next year with all the concussion issues. And Justin Jefferson has a $25 million base salary that they can restructure into a signing bonus and probably pick up about 18 million there. So right away, I just came up with 26 million. And
Pretty smart guy there. And you got to
they're-
think that TJ Hawkinson's deal is going to be evaluated. Harrison Smith, we don't know, although he was making peanuts compared to what he was making at one point. A lot of decisions to be made, Jeff, on the cap for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. And they have to have a strong draft. They're going to have 8 draft picks next April, plus perhaps a compensatory or two from the Darnold and Daniel Jones deals, and maybe make a trade, be active in free agency perhaps so they can free up some money and kind of shore up that offensive line, especially the center spot, whether through the draft or free agency. The cornerback position, they're going to need to shore that up too. So there's certainly a lot of work ahead for GM Kwesi Adolfo-Menza, for Kevin O'Connell. It's going to start with McCarthy and the quarterback situation and getting a better number 2 quarterback. But before we continue to look ahead to next year, we're going to look back on Sunday's game and talk about some of the things that took place. And there were a lot of highlights in the game. As we said, even if we take it with a grain of salt, because the Packers held out so many of their starters, key starters, starting with Jordan Love, of course. But the Vikings faced Clayton Tune, the 3rd-string Packer quarterback. He was no match for that Vikings defense. And Dallas Turner got to him a couple times in the game, including this play in the first quarter, a strip sack.
Beloved piece, 6 Pro Bowls, 2-time All-Pro. As good as any player of his generation. Tune is lit up. Football comes loose. Packers recover with Drake Dabney, one of their call-ups this week. It was Dallas Turner.
And Dallas Turner has really finished the season strong, which is a good sign for the Vikings defense. And they'll have Grenard back next year, Van Ginkel and Turner. That's a great trio of pass rushers. They can all play together. One of them maybe moves inside at times, but Dallas Turner 6.5 sacks over his last 8 games. And he had 35 tackles over that stretch and 8 tackles for loss. So he really has come on strong in the second half of the season. Bodes well for his future. Like McCarthy, he's only 22 years old, and he'll continue to get bigger and stronger through strength training and so forth, as McCarthy needs to do so he can stay on the field. So good stuff for Dallas Turner. Van Ginkel, another big game. Vikings defense, they just held the Packers 121 total net yards, -7 passing yards. And the Packers were pretty anxious once they got down 13-0 to just run the ball and get the heck out of Dodge, try to stay healthy for their wild card game next Saturday night against the Bears at Soldier Field, a game that the Vikings would have loved to be part of that game for sure. But J.J. McCarthy talked about his game and kind of another up and down performance. Had some great throws in this game, several great plays he made, including big plays to Justin Jefferson, Jalen Naylor. He had a terrific 18-yard completion to Ben Sims on a rollout, throwing on the run. Just shows his athleticism and what they've got to work with him if they can get him more consistent and not holding the ball, get rid of the ball. And J.J. McCarthy in the second quarter made a milestone pass to Justin Jefferson, 17 yards. And on this play, Justin joined Randy Moss and Mike Evans as the only NFL players to have 1,000+ receiving yards in each of their first 6 seasons.
I think the story has been written on him yet. Jefferson, and there it is. He makes the catch. And he's got 1,000 yards for a 6th straight season. Great.
And certainly Jefferson had a big day, 8 catches, 101 yards. His first 100-yard game, though, since week 5. And that's something that can't happen when you have perhaps the best receiver in the game. They got to get him the ball more regularly, more consistently next year. McCarthy ended up with decent numbers, 14 of 23, 182 yards, 85.8 passer rating. Finished the season 10 starts, but 2 of those games he left after the first half with that hand injury, including on Sunday. But he had a 6-4 record as a starter, which isn't terrible. Drake May last year, Robbie, was 3-13, missed one of their games. He was 3-13 as a starter. What's he doing this year? 13-3. So
The coaching matters, because you know as well as I do from being in Tennessee, Mike Vrabel knows what the heck he's doing.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. And he ended up leading the league in passer rating this year. So that's a good model for the Vikings to point to. And certainly, as we said, a lot of big plays by the defense in this game. We know that Emmanuel Wilson hurt the Vikings in the first game in Green Bay, had 107 yards rushing, but in this game they held him down. And on this particular play, an 18-yard loss as he kind of backpedaled too far before Eric Wilson took him down.
As the Packers, Wilson running for his life, and boy, he's going the wrong way. Wilson, he might get. Oh my goodness! Improved.
And that play set up the Vikings with a shorter field, drove downfield, had the big completion to Ben Sims by McCarthy, as I mentioned, and C.J. Ham. What a nice day for him to get a touchdown run here.
2nd and goal. They got 1 timeout left. Ham, he's going to bulldoze his way in for the touchdown.
And CJ, 2-time Pro Bowl fullback, maybe headed to retirement. The Vikings had a nice video tribute to him, a nice salute from the fans late in the game, and same thing for Harrison Smith, who could be headed to retirement. I think both those guys should be back the way they played at the end of the year. If they can stay healthy and continue to play at the level they did, which was really good down the stretch. But we'll see what kind of decisions they make. But the Vikings had nice tributes to them, and they had a nice last game of the season as the Vikings won on Sunday. Let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. Style or substance somehow became one or the other when choosing a truck. But there is another choice, not stopping until you have everything. That's GMC Sierra. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Elevation Crew Cab models with a TurboMax engine. That's an average finance savings of $4,949 combined with a $1,350 engine credit plus $1,750 bonus cash and $3,500 trade assistance allowance to get over $11,500 in total value when you trade in an eligible vehicle. That's 20% below MSRP. See your local GMC dealer today. Based on MSRP of $55,370, length of contract limited, must finance with GM Financial. Some customers will not qualify, must show proof of ownership and trade in a 2012 model year or newer vehicle. Savings based on bank rate of 5.22%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 2/2/26. So, Robbie, here's my thesis of the day. I think the Vikings right now might be the best team in the NFC North. Now, I know the Packers didn't play all their starters yesterday. We know that. But the Packers have lost 4 straight games. The Lions have lost 3 out of 4 games. The Vikings drilled the Lions the week before last, and then the Lions went out and beat the Bears, who lost their last 2 games. The Vikings should have swept the Bears. So my theory is the Vikings are probably the best team in the NFC North as we close the regular season, but it doesn't matter because they're not going to be in the playoffs because they lost too many games that they should have won this year. But you think about, as we said earlier, what could have been in this season, and that certainly stands out. All those different games and the fact that right now they might be playing as well as anybody in the division, certainly. And so,
yeah, they absolutely could have rode it. I mean, look at Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple of years ago. They were getting bad quarterback play, and they rode a really, really good defense to an AFC Championship game. That's exactly what the Vikings could have done, gotten some okay quarterback play with elite defense, but not to be, Jeff.
Yeah, not to be. And And I mentioned Harrison Smith and CJ Ham. Kevin O'Connell, in his locker room speech post game, kind of turned it over to those two guys, and they had some profound statements to their teammates.
It's been a pleasure. I know the year didn't go how we envisioned, but there's a lot to build off, like Coach says. It's been a hell of a ride. I really wish we could keep it going. Like, I think we're really hitting our stride right now. Just keep that going into the offseason. I mean, as long as you got air in your lungs and a heartbeat in your chest, never say die.
This game has meant so much to me my entire life. Being able to be with y'all, be with this organization, be with KO, you guys, man, it means the absolute world to me. I know it's going to be hard to step away, but I know it's time for me to be with my family. It's time for me to watch them grow up, be soccer dad. But these years are times that I'm never going to forget. Man, I truly, truly love each and every one of you. And man, my phone is always on. Whatever you need at any time, I'm here for you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I love y'all.
I know both of those guys really well, Robbie, and I did a lot of shows for a whole season with Harrison a few years back. He was he's one of our clients in our agent firm IFA, as is CJ, and they're both terrific guys, great family people, and certainly wish them all the best, whether they return or whether they choose to retire. As I said before, I hope they continue to play because they're great guys. Kevin O'Connell, in his post-game presser, he talked about McCarthy leaving the game early, and he's taken a little bit of heat for that, Robbie. He exited the game kind of on his own accord, felt that the hand wasn't right in the early second half. And some people are saying, well, you should have toughed it out and played and showed your teammates you can play through an injury. Well, that's fine if you're playing with a playoff spot on the line. In this case, I don't blame JJ for exiting the game or Kevin O'Connell for wanting him to get out of the game. At that point, the Vikings had a comfortable lead, and it was obvious the Packers were more content to shorten the game by running the ball and just get out of there with decent health. So I think it's a little bit of a reach to blame him for leaving that game, but O'Connell did refer to it. He talked about just the fact of it was an okay decision on his part, and he was asked whether JJ is the clear starter going into next season.
You know, I give him a lot of credit because he wanted to stay on that field like he always does, and he was able to, communicate that he needed to come out, and we got Max in there.
Are you comfortable going into next year with him as your starter?
I think every year you're coming back to build a team throughout the offseason, throughout the draft, throughout the, leading into training camp. I think he's improved throughout the season. I think he's grown like a lot of young quarterbacks do throughout the season. Today was his 10th start. I can't wait to work with him in the offseason and absolutely look forward to the continued development and improvement. And, I'm excited about where he's ending the season and know that there's some things we can really dive into as a group and JJ and myself. And, I look forward to the challenge of being the best version of myself for not only JJ but this entire team for sure.
Kevin, what did you think of the first half that he played?
You know what, I really liked some of the, he had some snaps where there was some real conviction to where he was going with the ball, finding the voids and vacancies, eliminating some things in rhythm, sometimes pre-snap, and then working his way through some coverages there. Finding completions, used his legs. Really the only negative was really just the penalty that kind of stalled us out, and that's just the competitor that he is. Appreciate everything about him as a competitor, but we just need to avoid ever setting ourselves back like that, especially post-snap where you're going to be second and shorter and you end up.
Yeah, Kevin's talking about the taunting penalty. And JJ's got to be better than that. He knows, and he talked about that he's going to learn from that, not have it happen again. Um, Talk about Max Brosmer. He was just okay in relief, completed 7 of 8, but held the ball on one of the sacks, and then he had a real careless play on a sack loss fumble where he kind of held the ball out high, and it's just I don't think he's the answer. And as we said, it's going to be one of the big challenges for the Vikings this offseason to find that right number 2 quarterback. I don't think they're going to be able to trade for a Mac Jones. He's a guy that would fit perfect in that role, but he signed a 2-year deal. Not a smart move on his part in San Francisco, and they're not going to let him go with Brock Purdy with his injury history. So they got to find the right guy, and I don't think Daniel Jones is coming back, and he's also coming off an ACL. So going to be some really important decisions ahead. Carson Wentz, we don't think is the answer. But as we said, some other positive things in the game. Jefferson hitting that 1,000-yard mark, and McCarthy finishes the year. We know numbers aren't pretty necessarily. 72.6 rating, ranked 35th in the league. He's got to improve that. He's got to improve his completion percentage, 57.6%. Those are things that they have to work on. But he did win some games, and that's something to build on, and have to figure out ways to keep him healthy. That's going to be a key too. And he talked about his off-season plan.
With the off-season plan, it's really just about how can I improve myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and really go from there. You know, there's definitely different branches from each of those routes, and to get in specifics right now is something that don't want to let the other team know what we're working on, and just continue to show up and be consistent every day. That's going to be the main thing.
JJ, you think you earned the trust of the decision makers here? Whether it's head coach, GM, owners, whoever.
In my opinion, I feel like I have, but at the end of the day, they have their own opinion, they have their own perspective, they see things different, they hear things from different places, and I just feel confident going into this offseason and content with where I'm at, because I feel and truly feel like they know who I am as an individual, and the potential and the capability that this offense could have with me at the helm. But at the end of the day, it's all about the guys. And, from here on out, if I'm here, if I'm not, I love every single one of those guys and had a friggin' blast playing for them.
That's J.J. McCarthy talking about his offseason plan, and it's going to be really interesting to follow his career trajectory. I still think he's got a lot of talent, and I think that they're going to get it out of him. I think he's a future Pro Bowl quarterback. But it's just got to happen quick, because I think this Viking team this year, if the offense that finished 28th in league rankings, if it had been just average with a defense that was 3rd ranked in the league and ended up with 21 takeaways, not as many as they had last year, and they had 11 in 2 of the games, Cincinnati and Detroit, but certainly the defense was there, as you mentioned, to be a quality playoff type team in bad weather potentially, and be able to shut teams down. And they've got a lot to build on with that defense too. Let's hear again from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Style or substance. Somehow it became one or the other when choosing a truck. But there is another choice. Not stopping until you have everything. That's GMC Sierra. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Elevation Crew Cab models with a Turbo Max engine. That's an average finance savings of $49.49, combined with $1,350 engine credit plus $1,750 bonus cash and $3,500 trade allowance to get over $11,500 in total value when you trade in an eligible vehicle. That's 20% below MSRP. See your local GMC dealer today. Based on MSRP of $55,370. Length of contract limited. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers will not qualify. Must show proof of ownership and trade in a 2012 model year or newer vehicle. Savings based on bank rate of 5.22%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 2/2/26.
So we mentioned J.J. McCarthy and his inconsistency, even in this game where he had some great throws and some passes he sailed high, a near interception that he threw. And Justin Jefferson, talked about his numbers this year. He ends up with 84 catches, 1,048 yards, but only 2 touchdowns and the 1,048 yards and the 2 TDs, a career low for him. And so the Vikings are going to be hoping that those numbers can rise next year and that Justin can resume his all-pro status, which he's not going to achieve this year because of the quarterback inconsistency, injuries, offensive line problems, and all the things that happen on offense. Here's Justin talking about reaching that milestone on Sunday.
Emotionally and physically, and just to come out, with the attitude of trying to finish the game, trying to leave a mark and show the world that I'm still the best receiver in the league.
And that he is. He and Jamar Chase, when they're both healthy and producing, and then when they have their quarterbacks too, because Jamar Chase didn't have Joe Burrow for a bunch of the year either. Dallas Turner, I mentioned, had another excellent game. He's been great down the stretch. He ended up leading the team in sacks with 8 this year, after having only 3 last year. 11 tackles for loss this year, only 3 last year. So he made big strides this year in year 2, and he talked about what he wants to do in the offseason.
I mean, yeah, honestly, I feel like, every season in the NFL goes by kind of fast. I was saying this after my rookie year, I felt like it happened just like that, in the blink of an eye. And, now we're going on to year 3, just stacking up another season, just another part of the career. And, just showing up to work every day, so.
And 2 big sacks today.
Yes, man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Dallas, what do you think like the offseason will look like for you now? Kind
of the same thing, as I did last year, preparing for the season. A lot of weightlifting, a lot of eating clean still, just trying to make sure that my body's, still in playable shape. But, also just resting and enjoying the off-season as well. But, still putting the work in, towards the end, going back in OTA. So.
What did you learn the most from Gink?
I learned a lot of football from Gink, man. I ain't gonna lie. It's just, I really feel like I learned the most just by watching him day in and day out, just being around him, just seeing how he handles his business, and just how attention to detail he really is as a football player. We have guys like that on the defensive side of the ball. You can kind of look at them as like a coach in a way, because just all the knowledge, just the high football IQ he has, in his brain. And honestly, it's a blessing, to be a sponge, on this defense, and just soaking all the knowledge I currently could receive, from all the knowledge and wisdom that we have on the defensive side of the ball.
Dallas Turner, J.J. McCarthy, they're 2 of the big keys to the future of the Vikings. And I think they both made some strides this year, got to keep progressing. They're both only 22 years old. That's a good sign. Vikings have to continue to build around them and have those guys continue to develop. So it's wild card weekend coming up, and some of the interesting results in week 18. Myles Garrett set the NFL sack record. The Seahawks clinched the number 1 seed with a win over San Francisco. Denver gets the number 1 seed in the AFC by beating the Chargers. I thought the Eagles made a curious decision by sitting all their starters when they had a shot at the number 2 seed, and would have played the Packers, who they have kind of owned. Instead, they're going to get the 49ers. We'll see how that turns out for Nick Sirianni, because he's getting second guessed in Philly. And those Philly fans, Robbie, they're going to do that.
I know them all too well, being from New York and sitting through the 2017 NFC Championship game, up 7-0, and then all of a sudden 38 straight points unanswered, and Robbie goes home with his tail between his legs.
Right. So looking ahead to Wild Card Weekend, and then Robbie and I are going to make our Super Bowl picks. I think there's some really great matchups this weekend. And certainly the game, the Sunday night game, was an unbelievable finish. Baltimore-Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh kicker Boswell misses an extra point, opens the door for the Ravens to go down. Likely gets makes an amazing catch on 4th down from Lamar Jackson, sets up a 44-yard field goal for the rookie, and he misses, and all of a sudden Pittsburgh wins the division. Aaron Rodgers talking about it's karma. We won the division. Oh, give me a break, Aaron. I think Houston's going to drill you come next Monday night. We'll see how that one plays out. Danielle Hunter will be all over him, and Will Anderson. But some interesting matchups, and starting on Saturday night with certainly the Packers going to Soldier Field against the Bears. And Robbie, I like the Packers to pull the upset. I think Chicago is a little bit of a fraud at the number 2 seed.
Interesting to say that. Normally, I would side with you, but nothing I have seen from the Packers over the last month, and you said it a couple of times during the show, they're on a 4-game losing streak. And I understand yesterday was, you can put an asterisk at it. Nothing I've seen from them, especially offensively, really gives me any great confidence unless they're going to hand the ball to Jacobs 35 times.
Yeah, and missing Micah Parsons has been just a huge loss for Green Bay, but we'll see how that one plays out. There's some other interesting games, as we said. The Chargers at New England, that's a potential upset. Certainly Buffalo at Jacksonville. I'm going to like the Bills in that game, even though the Jags have the higher seed. And as I mentioned, Houston goes to Pittsburgh. I like Houston in that game. Okay, Robbie, the Rams are a team that certainly should beat Carolina in Carolina. Matthew Stafford, the likely MVP. They're going to have the first game of Wild Card Weekend, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say the 5th seeded Rams are going to go all the way and win the Super Bowl. That's my pick, and I like the Rams all year. They had kind of a little bit of some tough luck in a couple games, but I still think top to bottom, they're the best team with the best quarterback potentially. I'm going to pick the Rams. Who you got for the Super Bowl? You going to pick the Eagles?
No chance, but I am going to go a different shade of green, Jeff. About 6 weeks ago, I decided to throw a couple of dollars on a certain team from Jacksonville. And I believe there is no quarterback in football that's playing better right now than Trevor Lawrence. They have a lot of playmakers on defense, a lot of high picks, and in a wide open AFC, everybody's going to think Buffalo's going to go down there and beat them. Not me. I think Jacksonville's going to ride a defense and a red-hot Trevor Lawrence to the Super Bowl. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be just another franchise to add to the list of ones that get one before our favorite team. So, unfortunately, that may be the case, but that's my pick, Jeff, Jacksonville.
Well, we will see how it all plays out. It'll be exciting come postseason. And certainly it's sad that the Vikings are not there. We'd like to have several more playoff shows. Hopefully that'll be the case next year. I've loved working with you this year, Robbie, and hopefully we'll be back next year and have about another 3 weeks of our shows in the postseason. And this has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN. Available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. This is Jeff Diamond with Robbie Rosenhaus, wishing everybody good health and a great 2026. And we will be back hopefully to talk to you in the upcoming 2026 season, which we hope will be a playoff season for the Vikings.